I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm thrilled to be talking about the series Robin Hood, and I'm joined today by cast members Jack Patten, Lauren McQueen, and Lydia Peckham. And Jack, I wanted to jump straight in with a question for you because, we see your character Rob go through losing his father, and we've seen how much he imprinted on him as a kid growing up and the state of grief that exists. And it was so interesting to watch your performance because his emotions become so inward and he kind of becomes very still and lost within himself. But then on the other side, he has this anger which becomes really volatile for a bit, and we kind of see that channeling of grief in these two very different ways. And I wanted to ask about really finding that and then how that becomes so formative for the rest of the series.
Okay, awesome question. Um, yeah, I think, Rob, in some aspects, he takes after Hugh, his father, a lot. There's a lot of pent up sort of regret, the way, Hugh has lived his life and the cards he's been dealt with. So I think, yeah, immediately, Rob definitely goes inward. But it isn't until, I think he he does ultimately, move forward. But it's a real it's kind of tricky for Rob because I think he has, a part of him just wants to live in the forest with Marian, but
Mhm.
he also, wants revenge. So it's kind of but as an outlaw in the forest, it's, you're being hunted. It's sort of a day at a time type thing for the character. So you kind of take it as it comes.
Definitely. And, Lauren, in your portrayal of Marian, she kind of grows up in this household with her father, which, is incredibly strict and oppressive in a lot of ways for her. And once she's outside of the home, we start to see her really come into herself and her confidence grow and all of these other aspects in her. And I was interested in how you thought about that evolution of the character and what felt important to you to really grow within her throughout the episodes.
Yeah, well, what I loved when I read episode one was that, she does grow from this young, innocent, inexperienced young woman and then flourishes into a woman of confidence who finds her own power and her own voice. She's never been able to stand up for herself before at home, but then she really, I think she struggles with her identity at the beginning as well. Like she despises everything Norman, and then it's only until when she meets Rob, it's like her eyes are open to this incredible world of opportunities, and it was just amazing to play a woman that has such a huge character arc in a really positive way.
It's wonderful. And, Lydia, for you and your portrayal of Priscilla, her own father describes her as being smarter than most other men. And we kind of see her from childhood. She grows up often being this young girl and then this young woman who's the only female in a room full of men as they're doing business. And, we see the smartness in how she observes everything. And how did you want her intelligence to really lead in a lot of ways? Because people don't necessarily expect it. So she can play to the fact that she's underestimated in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what I loved was that how they set Priscilla up when the sheriff says, "No, you'll stay as a young child and you will learn." And I think that that's quite a rarity probably in that time that, I mean, she is the sheriff's heir, and what that means in terms of leadership, I think has a lot of potential, and he like encourages that part of her. But it's interesting when she kind of goes too far and starts challenging him and she gets put back in her place. And I think that she has to be savvy because a lot of the other gentlemen around kind of dismiss her as a female. Her father doesn't, but she has to be savvy in navigating that. And she uses many ways, many tactics to get what she wants, but she's smart about it. I respect it, and she's got a very strong head on her shoulders.
She does. And, Jack and Lauren, I want to talk about the chemistry that you've built between your characters because when they first meet as adults, following the fact that they met briefly when they were kids, it's this kind of chemistry and this intrigue, which is very different to what then grows and develops as they start to realize so many of their ideas about the world and the things that interest them are so aligned. And I was interested in how that really grew and evolved the relationship over time because you're kind of playing it not necessarily on screen together as well.
Yeah, I think one of the difficult parts actually was not filming together at the beginning of the shoot for about 2 months. So it was really important when the characters have their first scenes that we really brought that chemistry and that bond together. And I feel like they really see each other for who they both are, trauma, so they kind of really understand each other. But yeah.
Yeah, and it's sort of that theme of like destiny. I think destiny is like sort of this recurring theme throughout the series, and the love and connection between Rob and Marian. It's like it's destined. It's sort of meant to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lauren and Lydia, and talking about your characters' friendship, it's such a beautiful thing to watch, because obviously it stems back to them being kids, and we see how protective they are, and they can truly be themselves in a way that they really can't be in front of a lot of people in their lives. Even what you were describing about Priscilla's relationship with her dad, there's still a lot that he doesn't necessarily know. And what were the formative pieces of building that together for you both?
Well, it was so nice when we first met at a dinner before shooting. We just got on so well. So we kind of just used that real life friendship and, used that in the scene. And it kind of made the Priscilla and Marian scenes really special, really, for us.
It was our first scene that we shot, like, of the whole show, was the scene together that you see in episode 2. And like, it's still one of my favorite scenes because it's with her, and I think they're like yin yangs as well, but they've had such different upbringings that they move with different different circumstances. Like, I have had the privilege of having a father that is really supportive, and you've had the unfortunate privilege of having Huntington. So I think I get frustrated with Marian, and Marian gets frustrated with Priscilla, which I kind of love, because there are so many friendships that are like that, but there's so much love and heart underneath it all.
Yeah, it brings so much light to all the chaos that's going on around them.
We were saying we wish we had cell phones, Laura, and then we could like be like, "Hey, girlfriend, I need a wine."
Definitely, and Jack with Rob as well, when he first kind of finds himself very alone, that's very different to this community that he starts really building around himself. And you see that people kind of really look to him, and it's very much his authenticity and his morals, being very true to himself, that really draws people in. And I was just interested in getting to kind of really explore that sense of what it is in him that really draws in this entire community over time.
Yeah, I think, he's a real man of action. I think he's really driven by doing what he thinks is right. I mean, from one day it's one thing, and the next day it's another. He's wrestling with that throughout the series. But I think, a lot of clearly, like, the outlaws believe in his cause, and they're like sort of cut from the same cloth, and it's you feel at home when you find those people, even in real life, right? Like, you don't have to necessarily be family, but yeah, you come across these people there, you just see eye to eye on things. You need to stick by them and back them.
And, Lydia with Priscilla as well, you were talking about the fact that she is heir to the sheriff and everything that brings. And there's all these little details and nods to that status. When she gets on a horse, she doesn't get on a horse herself. Someone else puts their hand out to lift her up, for example, and the costumes and even just the body language. And what were the details that really helped you to form so much of that?
I think, it starts with the script. As we keep saying, it was such great writing. There were so many clues about who she was in the script. And then you start working with the costume designer, and you start like finding the palette. So like, she was wearing a lot of purples and scarlets, and I think, and then your hair and makeup. And then they would often put like extras where, guards, and like, as she walks down the whole corridor, the guards would like move out the way, which gives you a certain air. And so, yeah, she walks with confidence, and it was kind of easy to be in that. So that was great fun.
I love that, in a very different way, Lauren, with Marian, there's that mention of, in my culture, it's kind of rude to stare at people. And we see moments where she's uncomfortable or a little bit uncertain, and the way that she very much avoids eye contact, but obviously what you were talking about before, that starts to really change over time. And so what were the shifts that you found in some of her body language and mannerisms from this?
Yeah, she's had a very sheltered life. She's never, she's never come across a boy like Rob before. She's only, spent time with her brothers. So I think just as her confidence grows throughout the show, which is in the writing, she kind of feel like with me, I was wanting to hold myself, standing up more, taller as she grows in confidence and maturity compared to when she first meets Eleanor, which is, she's a bit more vulnerable and more shy to be in this crazy palace.
And Jack, obviously, your role as Rob is incredibly physical for a number of reasons. There's everything from the archery training to just, needing to have this real instinct within the forest and the way that he moves around all of that. And what were all the different elements that went into building that side of the character for you?
Yeah, I mean, a massive physical element to it, which I just absolutely loved. And I tried, I got to Serbia as quickly as possible because I really wanted to prep, especially the bow and arrow stuff, the horse, and a lot of the hand-to-hand combat stuff too. But I had to, yeah, I spent just as much time focusing on all that stuff as I did with the script and sort of getting to know the character. But I got to know the character by doing all that physical training as well. It was like another element that just, filled up that glass, if you like. It was, yeah, it played a massive role for my journey on this shoot.
I love that. And, also wanted to ask you about just, you were talking a little bit before about the way that his anger and the idea and the want for revenge does become something quite consuming for him at a certain point. But there's that moment where his mum talks to him and is telling him, your emotions aren't a burden, they're a shield, and don't let anger be the one that wins out. And so there's this constant battle within him to try to find his way back to that. And how did you find playing that when it's such an internal aspect to who he is?
Yeah, that was like kind of like a personal one because I grew up with a single mum, you know what I mean? So it was, it's like I very much carried that scene that I did with Anastasia throughout a lot of the scenes that I did, even right all the way down to sort of episode, 10 even. Like that was just a recurring thing that I would either write down or play in my mind over again because, you know, like his mother told him that, it's kind of like very, it's deep. It means a lot if she's telling you that, you almost it's one thing for your father to say something, but your mother, it's like it almost, for me anyway, it rings a bit truer.
No, I love that description. And Lauren, with Marian as well, a lot of her growth also comes from Connie Nielsen's character, from Eleanor, who's the queen. And I wanted to ask about the way that that almost becomes a kind of mentorship, and the way that she's able to look at someone who finds a lot of autonomy for herself in a world that doesn't readily give it to women at that time period.
Yeah, I mean, Marian straight away sees her as this incredible role model that she's never had in her life. So it was amazing to watch Connie and her process on set. She brought so much knowledge to Eleanor. And it was just, yeah, Marian, kind of, she's never experienced this crazy world where there's so much power play going on in a big chess game that she has to kind of navigate herself through. So yeah, the way they've written the female characters in the show, it was something that I was really excited to be a part of.
Yeah, that's great. Well, congratulations to all of you on such a great first season, and thank you so much for talking about it. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Good day.
Thank you
See
so
you.
Bye.
much.